Hi y'all, my name is Mr. Chao and welcome to Chao Time. This week's episode is on yet another titanium watch. This is the Certina DS-1 Automatic in titanium. This is a watch that I've had for a few years now and was my first watch into the titanium world, and I'm ready to share my opinion on that. The way I review watches is by scoring them against a rubric in categories such as case and bracelet, dial, movement, history, and heritage, and that gives us a total score. I then take that total score and I multiply it by a value multiplier. If you'd like to know more about how this works, there is a video up in the top right hand corner, and also if you want to look at the rubric or the total tally of watches that I've scored so far, those are in the description below. After all that, I give a completely subjective opinion that includes all my personal biases, my emotions, my sentimental ties, other things that I feel like are important in watch purchasing, because that's how I make my watch purchasing decisions. So let's get to it. However, before we begin scoring the watch, we first need to understand what the purpose of the watch is, why it exists, and what design language inspires it. Well, the watch is a casual dress watch meant for the office or dinner dates. We'll start with the function, feel, and visual appeal of the case and bracelet. The case and bracelet are made of titanium. I couldn't find any mention on the Certina website or anywhere else on the internet about the grade of the titanium they use, but it is finished quite well. Titanium naturally oxidizes to form a layer of patina that helps it resist minor scratches and rusting. There is a very fine straight brush on the sides and tops of the watch, while the bevels are polished. It's relatively rare to find polished titanium, so this is a treat. The case shape is a fairly classic design, hard to fault, but also unmemorable. None of the angles or points are unpleasant to the touch. The various curves do work well together, though, and flow nicely into the bracelet. Speaking of the bracelet, there are 3 brushed pieces and 2 polished ones, making this a 5-piece bracelet. It is also quite comfortable. First, the lightweight titanium alloy contributes to the sensation of disappearing on the wrist. Second, the end link is recessed, allowing the bracelet to fall directly with the curves of your wrist. Third, the mid-links are genuine independent mid-links and articulate smoothly. The clasp is milled and signed with a friction retainer. There are 3 micro-adjust holes, which is the bare minimum to maintain functionality. Coming back to the friction retainer, I found that these wear over time and eventually become difficult to keep in place. This one, actually, had to be adjusted with a pair of pliers to get it to stay closed. The deployant clasp is thin, which is the final design aspect that contributes to the bracelet's comfort. The watch has a display case back, showing off the basic and reliable movement. Flip the watch over and you'll find a beveled and domed sapphire crystal. The shapes work really well with the case and look fantastic. The scratch-resistant sapphire is welcome and should not go unmentioned. The crown is the worst part of this entire watch. It's a basic push-down crown for one, which means that I would not take this watch swimming, even though it is rated to 100 meters of water resistance. Also, the gasket makes it incredibly hard to turn the crown in order to wind it. The crown would normally be well-sized and with ample knurling, but because it's so hard to turn, it's hard to even get any points for that. It is signed though with a Certina symbol that reminds me of a copyright symbol. 7.5 out of 10 for form and 7 out of 10 for function. Let's move on to that dial. The Sunburst Gray crosshair dial has the brand, various information, date box, and minute track printed on it. All printing is crisp and thick. The sunburst finish is deep enough for there to be a couple of different shades of gray depending on the viewing angle, so that in most direct viewing angles, The dial has multiple shades clearly visible. The applied indices are pentagonal prisms, with 2 at the 12 o'clock position. Each stainless steel hour marker is polished and well finished, and provides adequate separation from the dial, even in low light situations. However, they are a bit flat and could be slightly taller. The stainless hour and minute hands are split with 2 angles of polish, which helps it to catch the light, even in low light situations, which is appreciated. The polished second hand is flat. The only issue is that the gray dial lacks separation from the indices in certain lighting situations. I've been frustrated by trying to read the time on this watch since I'm so used to divers. Since this is not really a sports watch, the lack of lume is understandable. Even so, the components are uncluttered and clean, making for pretty easy legibility. There's enough going on this dial to be interesting without being overpowering. The minutes that are printed on the chapter ring are well aligned with the indices, which is honestly only something I look for because of so many negative experiences with Seiko chapter ring alignment. The dial design is inspired by their 60s and 70s watches, and neither contributes or detracts from the overall watch design. 7.5 out of 10 for form, 5 out of 10 for function. Let's move on to that ETA movement. The movement in this watch is the proven classic ETA 2824-2. I could not find any information about the grade of the movement, so it is fair to assume that it is the standard grade variation with an average rate of plus or minus 12 seconds per day. The single component with any added finishing is the rotor. It beats at 28,800 beats per hour and has a power reserve of 38 hours. This particular example has not been serviced and runs at about plus 6 seconds per day. It has a single complication, being the date. 6 out of 10 for form, 5 out of 10 for function. That brings us to 38.5 out of 60 for our objective categories, and that leaves us with our last and most subjective category, brand, heritage, and prestige. Certina is one of many Swiss watchmakers with notable achievements pre-quartz crisis that was then picked up by this watch group. The company was started in 1888 by Adolf and Alfred Kurth, producing movements. They produced their first watch in 1906 under the name Grana. The Certina brand was registered in 1924. Some interesting achievements include the first mechanical watch with a digital display, the DS, which stands for Double Security line, which focused on durability and reliability in scientific exploration, and Die Master, an incredibly scratch-resistant, sintered tungsten and titanium carbide with a hardness of 8.5 on Mohs scale of hardness. For reference, sapphire is a 9 and diamond comes in at 10. However, like some other brands in this watch group, Certina now sits on the lower end of the market and is perceived to be a lower end value watch. It has a low presence in the watch community and even lower visibility in the general public. As such, they receive a 6 out of 10 for heritage and prestige, bringing the total score to 44.5 out of 70. This watch is no longer in production and can be found between $250 and $350 USD. For the value multiplier, I'll use $300, which might even be a bit on the high side, to be honest. That means the value multiplier will be a relatively high 1.753 for this watch, and the value score is 78. The watch comes in near dead last in total score of the watches I've reviewed so far, at number 11, but is also the best value watch, coming in first. Good job, Certina. So, that brings me to my personal opinion. First, let's take a look at the calipers, because I love this case size. 39 millimeters across, 12 millimeters thick, and 48 millimeters lug to lug. And with these recessed links, it's perfect. It's so comfortable, I literally feel like it is not on my wrist sometimes. I'm often kind of shaking my wrist to kind of make sure it's still there. The titanium finish is muted, and so the polished parts give it a nice little bit of pop. I love titanium. I've had an attraction to this metal ever since I was a kid. I've bought titanium bikes, watches obviously, and knives. I also really like the movement at this price range. The ETA 2824 is a workhorse that is easy to get serviced and has a really nice smooth sweep to it. It's from a brand that has some heritage and prestige. The case back is see-through, which is nice, even though the movement is a little bit plain, but that's okay. Moving on to things I don't love about this watch. This watch is from the DS line, which again stands for double security. This line historically was a robust and reliable kind of tool watch that was used for racing or exploration and science. And so it's kind of disappointing to see this push-in crown. I feel like it should have been screw-in, and that would have resolved the issue of the crown being so hard to turn. Also, the dial color is this gray, very similar to the color of the indices in certain lighting situations, and that is not really the best. I feel like a watch should be legible above pretty much all else. And so whenever the indices do not stand out and the hands do not stand out, it's really, really annoying. And I think it happens more on the hands than it does the indices, but that's what the hands are for, right? To be able to tell the time. It's hard to fault the watch though. At this price point, its competition comes from watches like the Seiko 5 line, micro brands that are newer such as Zelos, and Chinese brands such as San Martin. And when compared to those watches, this is a better watch than any Seiko 5. It has more heritage and history than a new micro brand like Zelos, and it has a more proven track record and better customer service support than a Chinese manufacturer such as San Martin. This is a winner. So, is there anything about the scoring that upset you? Is there anything about the rubric that you think I should consider or change? Is there any content that you would like to see me create or watches you would like to see me review? Please let me know in the comments below. Thanks for sticking it through to the end. Have a good one. Bye, y'all.